The first point we have for the Australian economy is going back to last week before I actually asked the question, just to give some context. So recently, the Labor government, Albert and everyone else, have been talking about increasing taxes in super. We've been predicting this for a while. And now it looks like it's happening with the whole new 3 million threshold and the valuation and whatnot. So for those of you that didn't see last week, if you want to understand it, just check on our YouTube channel and you'll find it. But now this week, there's been more things come out of this, the proposal that was put forward, where it now looks like the Labor Party are at odds with each other in their cabinet over this new tax that was passed on super. So can you just give the rundown of what's transpired over this last week with the tax, and how do you see the end result of this going?
Yeah, so for just a quick background, so Labor brought out, if you got 3 million in super, that you're basically going to get the tax the full 30% rate on it rather than the 15% that you do now. And we've been predicting this for a while, and this is really going to attack self-managed super funds. And as I said last week, I think that this is part of this thing is Labor's big push to get people out of self-managed super funds into industry super funds, where they can control the money better, and then they can basically say, we're going to take all that and just give the fund an IOU to fund all our big spending promises. What's been transpiring over the last week is pretty much every cabinet minister has been coming out and just saying shit about this policy that never ever makes sense. There is no solidarity on this. There's a big division between Albo and his supporters and Chalmers and his supporters on where this is going. The big problem that Labor can't answer, and this will have massive impacts on self-managed super funds especially, is that the tax is going to have to be paid on paper gains. So not physical cash gains, paper gains. So say you've got an investment property in that's gone up by 20% in the year, right? $1 million to 1.2 million. You're going to have to pay 30%, 60 grand of paper gain that year on that asset. So it's be horrendous what it will do to people's portfolios. Same in stock portfolios and all that sort of stuff. What it could also do is if the pool's big enough for people that are having to sell, to pay their tax bill, come June 30 or where, October, depending on where the date is they set for these payments, that you could have massive turmoil in the markets, because what could happen is you're going to have all these people that are going to go, oh shit, I need to pay a tax bill because I've got to pay 60, 70 grand on paper gains. That what'll happen is they'll just dump the easy liquid assets that they've got, which is stocks, and then if you've got enough people doing that, that'll drive the markets down. And that's horrendous on what can do for long-term gains, because that has an impact flow on for not just the companies that are holding the stocks you're holding, but the entire market, industry rates, confidence in the market. One of the big things that you see in major stock market sell-offs is the computers, once they see that there's a move, is they start doubling down on that move, and then they create the move even worse. So you can have these tax-triggered massive sell-offs in the stock market. You can end up with stupid stuff happening in the housing market as well, where all investors just go, you know what, it's too hard. I'm just going to drop out of self-managed super fund or out of investing altogether, and then just move into the markets where it is easier to buy and sell and trade. So there's a lot of unintended consequences here for this. What has also come out of this is Labor are after more than just super funds. A lot of the ministers that have come out and said stuff have never been able to question, answer the question around, is the family home, next in line, and are investment properties, are trusts. They've never been able to answer, and the answers that they're given are all over the place, right? So they're absolutely, I would say they absolutely know that they've stuffed themselves because they know where they're going with this, and that's to tax everything and get rid of all these evil taxes. Meanwhile, the thing that gets me is they keep saying that it's a hit to the budget. Well, no, it's not, because that revenue was never there in the first place, right? I could say the same thing. We could say that because income tax is not 100%, that's a hit to the budget, right? And it's a stupid argument. And this is the problem with politicians, because they're all fucking dumb as shit, is that they don't understand actual economics, and all they're after is the soundbite, right? So all policies these days are driven by that 6-second grab that they want on Facebook, or they want on Twitter, or they want on the 6 o'clock news, right? That's all they're after, because after that, they know 95% of the people out there will just tune out. Their lives are so busy. They've got so much shit on, trying to get the kids to school, kids to bed, kids to soccer, kids to whatever, trying to pay their mortgage, trying to run their business, trying to save the woke fucking whale or whatever it is. There's so much else going on that they know that most people only ever grab the snippets. The other thing that's really amazing is these polls that have all come out saying that 75% of people, agree with it. When you actually have a look at who they're polled, inner city intellectuals that are already in industry super funds, who already get like 18, 19, 20% contribution rates, who are already on mainly government salaries, or they've been young people who think that 3 million is a long way off. Man, if you're a young person who's starting out in super now, by the time you're 50, you're going to have 3 million in your super, right? Because of inflation and the way that prices go up and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to affect you, and so all these people saying, tax the rich and all this sort of stuff, most of them don't realize that by the time they get to where they're saying that everyone is a dirty, rotten scoundrel, once they get there, they've set themselves a trap. And this is the dumb part that these people don't realize is, and you say, this might sound a bit sexist, but you see it with young women all the time. And it's fucking amazing, right? We were out somewhere, and there was a couple of, where was that? Anyway, doesn't matter. And the daughters of this couple we were with, they're so old people. And the one of the couples I was with just turned around to them and said, "Don't worry, girls. Your brother's going to look really good at 50, and you're going to look like a hag." and it's so true. I know it sounds sexist and that, but young people only ever look in the sphere around themselves at that point in time, and most of us don't, right? And they only ever make decisions based on what's happening in that sphere at that point in time, especially when it's big decisions like these economic ones, right? And that's why we're sliding into socialism, is because all the millennials and Zers, or whatever they call themselves these days, have all got this thing with, it's been brainwashed into them: tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, dirty, rotten scandal. They're just filthy. Boomers are bad, and all that sort of stuff. And my generation hasn't counted that. My generation is probably the biggest mistake of a generation around this, because we really let kids do whatever they want and didn't educate them, and didn't pull them up. If I was sprouting half the shit that the kids do today, fucking hell, I would have had one hide of a beating that I deserved. That's the biggest problem. And it's things like this that the Labor Party know, because the Labor Party are the biggest marketing and propaganda machine that you've ever seen. That's why all these premiers have 80 and 90 people in their media departments. They say they've only got 10 and 12, but basically their media departments cover the whole entire spectrum of government. Princess Palaszczuk up here, I think, has got the largest media team that any premier or any government in this country's ever had, right? And it's in the hundreds of people. It's just maddening. I think her total staff for 80 compared to when Campbell Newman was in, it was 15, right? So it's just absolutely amazing how Labor are all driven by marketing. And if you have a look at all the big dictators, Pinochet, Hitler, Mussolini, Mao, Stalin, Lenin, all the guys, Cuban dictators, Venezuelan dictators, Brazilian dictators, you name it, they've all been very, 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 very good marketers. All of them. So that's what Labor is playing on. Those of us who are semi-aware, people on here, that you can see this stuff coming, it's pretty much out of our hands. And as we'll talk about with some of the other stuff that's going on in the world, is I get asked this quite a lot, that people say, oh, who's really pulling the strings? I think the strings were cut, and the train's now on a runaway motion. And the people that started this back in the 60s and 70s, thinking that, we'll get to X, they're all sitting back, if they're still alive, sitting back going, holy fuck, what have we done? Because it's now in snowball reaction. And most of these politicians and most of these bureaucrats don't realize what they're doing. Then they're just so brainwashed on this train of thought that they just naturally do it now. They don't even, there's no one pulling their strings. They are just naturally in this tunnel and going for it hell for leather. So that's why there is so much chaos around the Labor Party about this sort of stuff, is because they're all in this mode of, we've got to tax, got to tax. Oh, we've got to fucking increase spending, right? And they don't realise that they've got to decrease spending, reduce government, get the country back on track economically, because that's how we're going to become stronger against a rising China, a rising India, a rising Russia. But, there's not a smart apple between them.
Yeah, definitely. One point, throughout that discussion that I found really interesting was when you mentioned about what they're looking to do around paper taxes, because I've heard about it before, but actually seeing that happen with paper taxes is a whole new ball game. So if they did actually do that, we all know that it'll destroy portfolios, like in property, even cryptos, for those that do crypto trading, stocks. It will destroy it, because paper gains is nothing like actual realized gains. So if that did come through and they were looking at taxing papers, would there actually be any solution to make sure you can still be a successful investor in Australia apart from actually moving overseas? Would you be able to find a solution around that?
Yeah, I would. I'd need to see the legislation. My gut feel is the foundation, the charitable and religious foundation type stuff would be the way to go. They tend to not tax those. If you have a look, you've got some pretty big players in that world that aren't going to allow their paper gains to get taxed, a la the Catholic Church, Sanitarium, what do they call them? So Greenpeace, World Wildlife Fund, all these big charities that get away with being tax free, but pay all their directors and all their people that look after it multi-million dollars. I think that can't remember what it is now, but I think the the woman that heads up Greenpeace is on something like $5 million a year, right, to run Greenpeace. And this is the other thing that, and I haven't seen it for a while, but Greenpeace had a fleet of their own jets. So why does an environmental organisation that's trying to protect the planet need its own fleet of jets? Right. And but they're well hidden, of course. Yeah. So things like that, you've got to have a lot of the foundation stuff. I'd say could be the way, but I haven't seen the legislation. I know that there is a real strain of socialists in the Labor Party that have no religious bone in their body at all, that want to tax the Catholic Church and all churches. So that could be. Watch your space. We really need to see the legislation.
Yeah, so really the only way you're going to get through it is just by being sovereign and not basically operating as an individual. You have to follow what the elite are doing because they're not going to tax their own people. So just copying them.
Yeah, if you're operating as an individual, you're always going to get screwed. Doesn't matter who's in power. The individual person, the person that earns the majority of their income in their own name, is screwed. The whole tax system is stacked against you. And that's why in one of the programs that I do is I teach that entities are your friend, right? Get to know entities and get to know how the entities work very intimately, because that's how the game's played. That's the vehicle that's played. You know, the wealthy and the elite don't do anything in their name.